Crazy, I'm crazy for feeling so lonely. Patsy Cline, remember that? Hey, did you know who actually wrote that song? It was Willie Nelson. You believe that? Such a beautiful song. Too bad, man. Willie Nelson's really gotten on the old progressive train. He's probably gonna start talking about socialism. So, man, that guy's really old, really old. Did you know like he wrote a bunch of songs for like I Will Always Love You. Remember the one that Whitney Houston did in the movie The Bodyguard? And previous to that, like it was a hit from Dolly Parton. Did you know that Willie Nelson wrote that song too? I'm not here to talk to you about Willie Nelson. I'm here to talk to you about Crazy. Now, okay, there's something has kind of come into my mind, come into the light a little bit, and I just let me this. I think I'm probably going to title this episode "A Message to Owen Benjamin and the Bears." So if you're part of the Bear clan, stay tuned. Like this is for you. But if you're new to the show, there's a bit of backstory. I'm gonna try to not bore my current audience to tears with filling you in on the last year of podcasting. But by the way, it's going to be a year for me in like a week or 2 weeks. What is it, the 5th today? So like a week and a half. It'll be my 1 year podcasting anniversary. So, or wait a minute. Did I do my first podcast in the last week of November? I need to look that up. Anyways, Crazy. Nobody wants to be called crazy. Nobody, like, remember that scene, remember that movie with Will Smith? With when he was the superhero? Right? He was like the drunk, angry old superhero. What was that? John Hancock. It's a really good movie. I know Will Smith is a weirdo and he's a Scientologist, but that was a good movie. And what's her name? Charlize Theron, who's, man, that lady's carrying around some demons. But brilliant actress, right? Remember that like he didn't like to be called asshole in that movie, and then like the Charlize Theron's part, and like she didn't like to be called crazy because women like calling a woman crazy, that's like the C word to them. Right? That is the real C word for women. Like you call a woman crazy, it's like, oh boy, you're gonna get it, because nobody wants to be. Like, nobody wants to be called crazy, but, like, more importantly, nobody wants to be viewed as crazy, right? That your views, your mindset is so far outside of reality that people, they won't even call you crazy. That's the worst thing, is that if people believe that you're crazy and you know it. Like, the reason why people won't hang out with you, have fellowship with you, listen to your thoughts, whatever, you know what I mean? Like, is, because we've all met crazy people, right? And when we meet those crazy people, we don't say to them like, oh, you're crazy. We just disassociate with them. We're just like, okay, all right, that's enough out of you, right? I'm gonna make sure that I'm never in the same room with you again because you're nuts. You're a crazy person, and I don't want crazy around me, right? And we all have like some sort of, maybe not a fear, maybe that's like, maybe fear isn't the right way to try to describe how we react to that, but nobody wants that, is what I'm getting at. Nobody wants to be viewed as being a crazy person. And because of that, like I'm just like you, like I don't want people to think I'm crazy. But that all ends today, okay? Let me start off by saying, like when people, it's become in vogue for the last, I don't know, maybe 60, 70 years to bash on Christians for their practice of Christianity and their belief in Jesus Christ, because it involves a book that spans 3,500 years of writing, right? 2,000 years from Christ to now, 1,500 years before Christ, it was Moses. And Moses is the one who started writing this book. And he gives what is believed to be a historical account of things that happened even prior to Moses. And there is some things in this book that other people use as leverage to call you crazy. Like, oh, you believe that there was some guy named Jonah that lived inside the belly of a whale for 3 days and lived, and then the whale just spit him up on the beach. Like, listen, that's a crazy story. There's a story in this book about a man named Joshua who was the leader of Israel because Moses had died. And Joshua was now in charge, and there was this fierce battle that they were having with this other tribe of people. And the problem was, like, it was kind of getting late in the day. And Joshua realized, like, we're going to need some more sunlight. Like, when that sun goes down, like, we're screwed. And so he reached his hands towards the sun like a Jedi master and said, "Sun, stand still." And it's like, dude, you believe that? That's crazy. You believe a man told the sun to stand still, and it did, and they got, I think it was 4 more hours or 8 more hours of daylight. Like, listen, there are people that will use what's in this book. Like, you believe that Moses parted the Red Sea and the people just walked across on dry land, and then the Egyptian army followed them, and God closed the gate, and all the water crashed on them. It's like, those people will come to you and try to shame you, right? Because those stories, whether you like it or not, those are hard stories to accept. I mean, it's fine when you're a kid, right? You go to Sunday school and they read the story of, like, how King David slayed the giant, right? We hear all these stories and it's like, ooh, But when you get older, people are like, oh my God, you believe in that ancient book? The one that caused the Crusades? Caused all these people to die? You believe that a man lived in a fish for 3 days? And they'll try to, and the tendency, because we all have a fear of being regarded as being crazy. We all kind of go home and be like, well, maybe I don't believe that. I mean, come on, that is over the top. Well, I'm here to tell you that I have, even though I have my own struggles with those stories, I figured out the way to regain control of that conversation when it happens. You know what you do? It's real simple. You look square in their eyes and you say, oh, brother, of course not. Brother, that's not even half of the crazy stuff that I believe. You've never read that book. You have no idea how many other crazy stories are in that book. And guess what? I believe every one of them. And then you give them that painful silence. You just close your mouth and stare at them. And they'll walk away from you. And guess what? They're going to regard you as crazy for the rest of their lives and the rest of your life. Right? Because you have to be, it's your life. Do you understand that? It's your life. You are free to believe and struggle with and meditate upon and all that other stuff with whatever you want. Right? You are ultimately responsible for the condition of your own soul, and you are not to be pushed around by other people's intimidation and use of your own fear. Right? You have to be in control of that. Because when other people use your fear against you, your shame against you, that's demonic. Do you understand? Like, that's a demonic strategy. You have to be in control of it. And why did I just say all that? Because there are stories of my life, just for the new listener, about 7 years ago, I needed to find out if there truly was a God or not, to such a degree that I got rid of all my possessions and I bought a backpack, and an expensive one, a nice one, an REI one, right? So $350. And I put a sleeping bag in it, changed, some socks, some underwear, just things that you absolutely have to have, like a toothbrush and all that sort of thing. And I started walking east. That was it. Walk east. And I was in San Diego, so I was at the most western point of the United States, and I started walking east with no money. Because I came to such a desperate place in my life where it was like, okay, I just need to know. I need to know, I just need to know the truth. If there is a God, or if there is not a God, because if there isn't a God, if there is no God who's going to talk to me and be a father to me the way that we are guaranteed in this book, I might as well pull a lemming. I might as well jump off a cliff. Because this life is just, the rewards do not outweigh the pain that you have to go through. The shattered careers and the shattered dreams and the dashed hopes and expectations. It's like, man, this is just painful, and you're just gonna get old, and your body's gonna break down, and it's gonna be painful, and it's probably, your kids are probably going to abandon you. You know what I mean? Like, there's not a lot of hope. I need to know. And so I started walking east. And I'm writing a book about that whole experience. You want to try to shame me, call me crazy? It's like I'm aware of how crazy the things that I believe and some of the things I say, I'm aware. You know what I mean? But even in the things that I have already explained, there's a lot that I haven't brought up because I know. Dude, I know there are maybe a handful of people on the earth right now that are going to be able to receive it and not look at me screw-eyed. Look at me and write me off as a crazy person. That's why I don't bring it up, because just like you, I don't want to be viewed as being crazy. Right? I am a fairly smart individual. I have accomplished a great deal in my life. Right? For those of you that are new, like, I was a commodity trader. I traded futures and options for a firm, right? On behalf of clients. You have to be smart to have that job. It takes a great deal of study to get your licenses and then to actually do the job, and you have to be good at math, and you know what I mean? Like, I'm smart. So when I say I'm smart, I'm not trying to, toot my own horn. I'm trying to say, I understand the things I'm about to tell you they're going to sound crazy. And hopefully I will have the presence of mind at the end of this podcast to bring it all around to what I'm actually getting at is, in these times, listen, number one, you must go pick up a copy of C.S. Lewis, The Screwtape Letters, and you have to study that book as if it is nonfiction. Right? It's going to be hard, especially if you've not read everything that C.S. Lewis has ever written. It's going to be hard to understand the lingo. But it's I brought this up yesterday. Listen, there are demons, and I'm going to tell you a couple demon stories just to make sure that everybody listening to this podcast understands that. Listen, you're either going to listen to this and write me off and think that I'm crazy and never listen again, or you're going to receive it and hopefully become a subscriber to the podcast. But I'm probably going to lose a lot of listeners on this one, because of what I'm going to tell you it's going to be difficult. It's going to be sun stand still difficult, and I appreciate, I am fully aware of that. All right. But I touched on something yesterday that, okay, listen, number one, there are demons. Number two, there are two favorite places that a demon wants to have you, painted into a corner in. And one of those is the guy that we just talked about, the kind of person that will shame you. Say, oh, you believe all that crazy stuff. They either want you to believe that they don't exist at all, right? Just like in The Usual Suspects, the greatest trick the devil ever played was convincing people that he doesn't exist. That's one place, that's one favorite place that demons can pigeonhole people into. That's where they want you. And the other place that they want you, if they can't do that, If they can't convince you that they're not there, then the other place that they want you is they want you so focused on them that it corrupts your soul. They want to destroy, for those of you that do believe that there is angels and demons and a God in heaven and Satan and all that other stuff, then they don't want you looking at them. What they want you to do is look at their deeds, right? They want you focused on their deeds so that the knowledge of what they're doing, the attacks on children, the attacks on the moral fabric, the attacks on society, they want you so focused on that it corrupts your soul, because it's depressing. It's weakening to your soul when you see like this thing going on in the transgender community, right? Where there's this group of people that have an over 40% suicide rate, and there's this other group of people that are like, oh no, we need to embrace this. It's like, no we don't, we need to do the opposite of that. And what the demons want you to do is they don't want you to see them. They don't want you to look at the demons, right? Because that would require light. And they don't like light. In fact, they're allergic to it. What they want you to do is to keep your focus, to keep your eye, which is the light of the body, right, or the light of the soul. They want you to keep your light on the darkness, because that's how the darkness gets in. And it weakens you and saddens you and confuses you and that sort of thing. That's the other place. And that's what is written in the Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. It's the very first thing that he brings up. And you need to read that book as like a operational manual. C.S. Lewis had, for just a little backstory on C.S. Lewis, he was an atheist, right? Then he went to Oxford and he was studying and he met J.R. Tolkien. J.R. Tolkien was a devout Christian. They were buddies. They were drinking buddies. Like they'd go to the bar and drink beers and play pool and throw darts or whatever it is that they did. And like they were friends, and it was Tolkien's influence on C.S. Lewis that was very instrumental in his conversion to Christianity. But C.S. Lewis was an atheist, but he was brilliant, a brilliant mind, brilliant thinker. And when he wrote the Screwtape Letters, like he writes it as there's this demon named Screwtape, and that like you have to read the book to understand like why that name is relevant and significant. But he's talking to his nephew, right? And Screwtape is like he's like a political head of the demons, and Wormwood, his nephew, is like a new guy, and it's a correspondence between Wormwood and Screwtape. And what the book is about is demonic strategy, right? And that's how C.S. Lewis communicated, like, this is what demons do. This is their whole thing. This is their strategy. This is their plan. And you need to read this book because you need to read that book and see how some of those things are happening in your life so that you can be aware of them, because that's 99% of the battle is just seeing it for what it is. And that's how you, like, if you want to prevail in warfare against demons, like, you have to be the third person. You have to be the third category of people, right? There's the one people who don't believe at all. Then there's the second category of people that demons also prefer that you be, which is to focus on the deeds that they do. The third person is more like a general, right? More like a strategist. They just look at it like, okay, there are demons. This is my enemy. Like when I see demonic activity, it's like, okay, that's what it is. That's demonic activity. I'm not going to allow myself to get too emotionally involved in it, nor am I going to be so dismissive of it that I'm just going to, I'm just not going to, I'm going to act like it isn't happening. I'm just going to be like a wartime general and say like, okay, that's my enemy, and I guess it's time to fight, right? It's a very pragmatic stance. And the way that you obtain that is study. You have to study. right? You have to have mentors, and in this case, unfortunately, C.S. Lewis is dead, but you can still consult his work. And the Screwtape Letters is not just some, it's not The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which also, like when you read The Hobbit, like J.R. Tolkien's book, like The Hobbit is about Christianity, right? The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is about Christianity. It's about the Christian walk, right? It wasn't meant to be a Disney movie or whatever, whoever produced those movies, or Pixar or whoever. I don't know who produced those movies. Like if you just watch those movies and were entertained by the little, the Hobbit and the elves and the Steven Tyler's daughter and all that other stuff, it's like, dude, you missed the point. You missed the whole point if that's all you got out of those movies. Like that, those movies are about what it's like to walk in a spiritual kingdom, right? And it's the same thing with the Screwtape Letters. Like, don't get too caught up in the fact that C.S. Lewis had the common decency to write it as a story so that you could absorb the lesson. You need to read that book. We are up against demons who are for all intent and purpose are walking out in the open, and that's kind of your call to action. And the reason why I'm doing it is I just got done watching a live stream by Owen Benjamin, and I can tell, like, listen, Owen, if you're listening, like you're on a good path. You're on your ability to call these demons out and call them by name is indicative of that you are operating inside of your calling, and it's magnificent to see. One thing I would tell you is you have got to not allow the deeds, the looking into the darkness. You can't let that corrupt your soul, because it's very easy to maintain. You have to read books. You have to train, right? You have to be able to spot things. You have to be able to call things by their name, which you're doing. But there's a discipline to this, and there's a lot of people who've written books on how to practice this discipline so that you don't get defeated, so that you don't fall into that second category where it's like you're just so busy looking at the fact that these demons are attacking autistic 7-year-old children, and that our society is putting them on TV saying, look at this little autistic boy who thinks he's a drag queen. And the whole nation celebrates. It's like, dude, that's demons, right? Now, you can look at that and let that make your soul sick and become so angry and so confused at how this is happening and how it is that not everybody sees it the way that we see it. That can be a very confusing thing. And guess what? When you're confused, check. You're in check. You know what I mean? Like, you have to play better chess than that. You can't okay. Confusion is the weaponry of demons. It even says that in the Bible. Like one of Satan's greatest tools in his toolbox is confusion. If he can get you confused, he's got you. Right? And it's a very confusing thing. Where it's like, we have these people that are like, oh no, trans people, they're just normal people. And you're just looking at like 40% suicide. Hello, 40%. That's damn near half. You're saying damn near half of everybody who claims to have this whatever lifestyle or whatever kills themselves. Am I going crazy? What's wrong with you? It would be like, okay, like fentanyl, for example. We've all heard the statistics, like there's this new drug called fentanyl. And this year, in 2017, it killed half as many people in 1 year that our 10-year conflict, or however many years it was, in Vietnam took. Because Vietnam, I think there was 600,000 people were killed. And fentanyl killed 300,000 people in 1 year. Nobody looks at that and says, well, you know, I mean, the fentanyl lifestyle, man, you just have to be more accepting. It's like, no, we don't. No, we don't. That's 300,000 dead people. I don't have to accept this. We need to do something. Is it Big Pharma? Right? Is it Pfizer doing this? Like, who's doing this? Is it the Food and Drug, whoever the Surgeon General and the head of the FDA? Like, are they complicit in this? Like, we need to find out what's happening here. We got this drug coming in from China. It gets shipped down to Mexico, and then Mexican people bring it across our borders, and 300,000 people, young people mostly, die. There's nothing confusing about that. There's nobody, you know what I mean? Like the left, the leftists, they're not out there saying, oh no, you just need to be more accepting of the fentanyl lifestyle, man. There's 87 different categories of fentanyl user. You just need to be accepting, man, you racist bigot, you Puritan. What's wrong with you? People want to do fentanyl, they want to do, no, they're not doing that. Because at this point, even they know that would be crazy. Just like 10 years ago, no leftist would say, yeah, it's okay for a 7-year-old autistic boy to be on Ellen or Oprah Winfrey or whatever show he was on, like Good Morning America. If you said that to a leftist, a progressive 10 years ago, they'd be like, what, are you calling me some sort of monster? Of course not. But today, they are. So just imagine in 10 years if leftists were like, hey man, you need to embrace these people. You need to be more accepting of fentanyl users, man. You'd be like, no, we don't. No, we don't. This is a war. People are dying and we need to fight. We've got this group of people called trans people, and damn near half of them are going to kill themselves this year. Or however the statistics work out on that. You're over there saying, oh no, we need to celebrate this. No, that's crazy. You're crazy. But remember that line from the Suicidal Tendency song? I can't remember which song it was, but it's like, this is crazier than, it was the Suicide song. This is crazier than Charles Manson eating a bowl of Fruit Loops on your front porch. You're saying like we need to embrace these people who half of those people are going to kill themselves. I don't need to embrace that. You're crazy. You want to call me crazy because I believe that Jonah was in the belly of a fish? Your beliefs are literally going to cause the deaths of half of this demographic of people. You're crazy. And your brand of crazy is going to result in the loss of human life. You want to sit here and call me crazy because I believe that Joshua said a prayer and God answered it and held the sun in suspension or stopped the rotation of the earth or however it was that miracle actually worked? Me believing that isn't going to cause anybody's death. What you believe is going to it's going to facilitate that autistic boy who's innocent, he's going to kill himself because of you. You're crazy, and your crazy is dangerous. So what do we do? How do we face these demons? Like, okay, well, number one, understand this. I'm going to qualify that. I'll give you some stories that will convince you that I am in fact a madman here in just a second. I want you to understand this, that demons are weak. That is their merchandise. When you are confused, you are in a weakened state, right? When you're confused, your ability to reason. So that's what demons peddle. They peddle weakness because that's what they have, because that's what they are. Do you understand that? Demons are weak. They're not to be feared. You have to understand. Something else that you need to understand, that the language of demons is nonsense. The language, the rhythm, the lingo, the accent, like all those whatever words that I can use to describe. Like if you came to Albania right now, people here speak a particular language. It's called ship. What that word means is the language of eagles. Don't ask me about that. But if you came to Albania, then the language that Albanians speak is called ship. The language that demons speak is called nonsense. All right? When you hear nonsense, you have to understand that's demons. You are currently listening to a demon when you hear nonsense. So when somebody gets on television and says, listen, I'm going to get on my private jet and I'm going to burn $20,000 worth of fuel so that I can go to some other place where I'm going to charge people a bunch of money to listen to me speak about why you shouldn't be burning fuel. That's nonsense. There's a reason why it's infuriating when you hear it. It's because it's nonsense and it is the language of demons. There is a demographic of people that represent, I think it's like 0.5% of the population of the United States. But still, those are human souls. They are living individuals with potential and a mission from God, right? And half of those people are going to extinguish their own lives. And then their bloodline will be in the earth no more. That is a horrific tragedy. And nearly half of those people are going to end their lives, and yet we have these people who stand up and say, number one, there is no such thing as morality. Number two, we are the priests of the new morality, and we say that we have to embrace these people. We have to embrace this lifestyle, and if you say anything contrary to what we say, you're evil. You're the evil person. We just need to let these people keep killing themselves until we figure out, until we figure out a way that we can make more people affected with this mental illness. Okay, well, that's nonsense. That's nonsense, and the reason why it is infuriating is because it's by design. The reason why when you hear these things, like what Owen Benjamin was talking about today, and what you're seeing in the news media, where they're parading these trans people out, where we have the most winningest gold medalist, right? Like until Michael Phelps came along, it was Bruce Jenner. He was the prototype. He was the manliest man who ever lived. He got all the gold medals, and he wasn't just doing swimming, baby. He was a decathlete. That's the hardest one. And he had more medals than anybody ever got. And then fast forward to, present day, this manly man is chopping his dick off, wearing a dress, putting on, a wig, killing people, killing some lady with his car. And then he gets to be on the cover of ESPN magazine and the cover of whatever, and this is the Woman of the Year. The reason why it's infuriating is because that is what the demons, that's their merchandise. They speak nonsense to you, one, because it's their language, and two, it's because it's infuriating. Because you look at it and you say, how can you be saying, hello, how can you say this? That is a man. If all the human beings died today, and then 100 years from now, the aliens came down and they studied this planet, and they categorized and they inventoried all the dead human bodies that they found. When they came across Caitlyn Jenner, they would take that corpse's DNA and they would determine, like, oh, this was a male of the species, because that's science. That's science, not the Bill Nye science, but real science. And you're looking at it going, what are you talking about? That's nonsense. And then you get all angry about it because people are talking nonsense to you. It's by design. You cannot let yourself get infuriated by it. You must defend yourself against it. And the way that you defend yourself against getting too emotionally involved in the infuriation camp, because that's the thing, is get you all worked up, get you all confused. What's happening? In the world where people are calling Bruce Jenner the Woman of the Year and putting him on magazines and not prosecuting him for killing a lady. What's happening here? Right? That is a tactic to get you all worked up and get you off base, off center. And one of the ways that you combat that is by understanding, like being able to call it by its name. It's like, oh, you're speaking nonsense. I've heard this language before. That's the language of demons. You're a demon. That's why you're speaking nonsense, because that's the language of demons. I know that probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but try it. You'll understand there's power in that when you realize, like, oh, I see what's going on here. That's a demon. I know it's a demon because they're speaking nonsense, right? When you see Nancy Pelosi up there saying, well, if you want to read what's in the Affordable Health Care Act, I guess you're just going to have to sign it into law, and then you can read it all you want. Nonsense. Demon. Shut up, you filthy demon. Oh, don't you know these MS-13 members? Remember when she said that? Doesn't Donald Trump know that these are all just God's children? With those crazy eyes. Nonsense. You're a demon, you filthy demon. Be gone. You're speaking nonsense. You're speaking the language of the devil. And once you do that, you start realizing, like, oh, okay, that's... You start becoming that third category of people where it's like, oh, I see what's happening here. You're an enemy. You're a demon. And you're trying to ruin the earth, because that's what Satan's whole strategy is to kill all mankind, flip his middle finger up to God. Like, that's his whole thing. And once you see it from like a military standpoint, like a strategic thing, it's like, oh, of course that's what they're doing. Because if I were the devil, that's exactly what I would do. Okay, all right. So I guess I will take comfort in the fact that, like, it's, I now realize that it's time to fight, right? So what I was going to say to kind of prove, that if you did not believe that I was a madman up until this point, here I'll tell you some stories that will remove all doubt, right? On my crazy walk across the planet, within a few days, I was in Sedona, Arizona. Beautiful. If you've never been to Sedona, two things. One, I strongly recommend that you go there. And secondly, I strongly recommend that you stay the hell away from there. It's people, like all the rich people from all around the world who believe in like crazy religious stuff, they all go there, right? Like all the Satanists and all the like New Agers and like all the crazy people, like they're all there. They're all represented. It's a crazy place to be. Because it's like all the weird people that are also simultaneously like super rich, right? So there's no turning back for those people. There's no talking to them because they're rich, I mean? It's like, man, I'm obviously doing something right. I got a mansion, a yacht, right? Got the AIDS monkey's bones. Remember that from 30 Rock? I was walking through, but do go to Sedona. It's breathtaking. The beauty of that place, the beauty of Sedona, Arizona, is it's otherworldly. You know what I mean? Like you go there and you're just like, wow, this is so beautiful, so beautiful. Anyways, so I'm walking through Sedona. I'm walking straight because there's only one road, right? Because Sedona's in this canyon. And there's one road that goes through it, and I'm walking down this road in the middle of what they would consider like a town, and a demon jumps out at me. There was this homeless guy, right? And he had is it cirrhosis or psoriasis? Like his skin was like falling off of his face, like leprosy, right? But it's not leprosy. It's like the word is either cirrhosis or it's psoriasis. But either, you know what I'm talking about, right? It's blotchy, and whatever. And this guy was like fat, he was very, very, very chubby, but he wasn't like, I don't know, like my 600-pound life fat, but he was pretty fat. His skin was all nasty. His hair looked like he had you ever seen mange on a dog? Like that's what his hair looked like. And he had a horrific, like I would say probably like a deadly case of herpes on his lips. Like it was so bad that it was like it had gotten up into his nose and everything. Like if you're watching on YouTube, like if you're listening on the podcast, you might want to check the YouTube version of this podcast because I'm doing like things with my hands. It was like from his nose to like a half an inch on both sides of his lips, and out, just his entire lower face covered in herpes sores that were oozing, right? Nasty stuff. And this guy jumps out of the bushes in the middle of this town. It's middle of the day, right? The sun's out. It's middle of the day. It's a beautiful day. Beautiful Sedona. And this guy jumps out of the weeds, starts talking to me. He says, "Oh, did you hear that what did he say? Did you hear that the goddess Athena and her priestesses got arrested yesterday?" And I just looked at him and I was like, "No, and I don't want to talk to you." And I just kept walking. And he kept walking like behind me. And he kept muttering this stuff about the goddess Athena had been arrested and her priestesses were arrested with her. Just complete, bizarre, weird stuff where it was just like, number one, like a normal person doesn't just approach people and start talking this stuff. This was before I knew that nonsense was the language of demons, right? This was like my first encounter where like I started putting together, because there's more stories. Like it took me a number of encounters to realize like, oh, this is nonsense. I've heard this before. Right? Like when you hear people speak in Spanish, and if you're not a Spanish speaker, you know the sound of Spanish. And if you don't speak Russian, but you hear Russian people talking, you're like, oh, that's Russian. Those people are Russians. I came to a place in my life where because I'd heard it so many times, it's like, oh, nonsense. I've heard this before. This is demons, right? No problem. Identifying it is like 99% of the battle. That's why when you see Jesus talking to the demons before he cast them into the pigs, he asked them like, hey, what's your name? And the demon says, well, my name is Legion, for we are many. Right? I could do a whole sermon on like the significance of that, like why Jesus asked them. It's like, because knowing the name of it is power. That's the significance of the story of Rumpelstiltskin. Right? Knowing its name is the power. Knowing that confusion is its name. It's like, oh, wait a minute, confusion. I know this. I know your name. You will not have power over me, confusion. When we see these horrible things, the way that these demons have convinced a society to attack children, it can be infuriating. It should be. But you have to learn its name. I'm not gonna do the whole podcast on the significance of that, but trust me, that's why you've got to read the Screwtape Letters. Know its name. It's very important. And have a strategy, have a discipline. Anyways, by the way, let me just finish that story. So after walking for quite a while, that guy finally decided to turn back, the crazy demon that jumped out at me out of the bushes. that poor bastard. Like, that's when somebody's like, oh, you know, that's not just demonic oppression. That's full-on possession. Like, that guy was possessed. And the demons were just having a heyday with this guy. His whole, the whole lower section of his face covered in herpes. Just nasty, and his skin was, it just was weird. Anyways, I continued on, and later on my walk, I stopped and I had some coffee and I picked up a local newspaper. And the damnedest thing I saw was this lady and like 3 or 4 of her friends had gotten arrested. And they were running a prostitution ring. And what their whole thing was is like, oh, what those people were doing was they were saying like, well, we believe in the Greek religion, and because like Athena, or and maybe I'm screwing up the name, but back in the days of Greece, like the priestesses of Athena, the way that they got money is they would leave the temple, they'd go into the town, they would prostitute themselves, and people would patronize them and have sex with them and give them money, and that was their way of like tithing, right? And so these ladies were, and they were nasty looking ladies too, by the way, they're gross, and there were pictures of them, and the cops had busted their little prostitution ring. And it was like, that's what that weird demon was talking about. He was talking nonsense about a thing that happened, right? So there was like a correlation there. So that's, you know, when I talk about demons and stuff, it's like, dude, I have stories, many like that. I could sit, like, seriously, I could sit here and do an entire show of just the times that I've encountered demons and angels. And yeah, you can sit there and be like, oh, crazy. Yeah, okay, fine. Fine, call me crazy. Yes, sun stands still, crazy. Yes, Jonah in the belly of the whale, crazy. Yes, a demon jumped out of the bushes at me, covered in herpes and psoriasis, talking about, oh, did you hear that Athena got arrested? Or whatever the goddess of prostitution was. I can't remember. Maybe I'm getting the names wrong, but dude, I can do this all day. I've got way more stories, and hopefully you will buy my book when it's ready, and you can read that, because it's all real. And what you're seeing on TV right now, where they're parading these children, that the left and these progressives are advocating the attack of children. Like, listen, it is time to fight. And you cannot use conventional weaponry. You have to use spiritual weaponry. And the best advice that I can give you to start would be, number 1, pick up C.S. Lewis, The Screwtape Letters. And if you don't want to go buy it, you can go onto YouTube and listen to the audiobook being read by John Cleese of Monty Python fame. I just listened to it again yesterday. It's brilliant, right? But you need to read that book over and over again and get it in your mind, because what you're seeing right now in regular society, in normal life, is demonic. You need to be prepared for it. And the second bit of advice outside of that is go pick up any book written by a guy named E.M. Bounds. E.M. Bounds was a guy who wrote exclusively about prayer. What it is, how to do it, what is the significance of it, how does it work, how do you build your own, you know what I mean, how do you do it yourself, build a prayer life. Pick up any book by E.M. Bounds and read it. And practice everything that's in it. And when you're done with that book, go buy the rest of them and rinse and repeat. You need to understand that this is a battle, and that there are weapons at your disposal, and that you must use those weapons. And secondly, you're going to need to dedicate yourself to a prayer life. I know that you've been putting that off. I have too. Right? I don't have the strongest prayer life in the world. I was just talking about that with Pastor David. He was saying the same thing. The devil doesn't want you praying. The reason why you have such a lackluster prayer life is because you've been attacked and it worked. The reason I don't have a very good prayer life right now in my life is because I have been attacked and it worked. Right? I allowed myself to get defeated, but here's the beautiful thing. that God is still the Father, and he never leaves you. It's never even crossed his mind, and you can pick right up and start again. Go buy C.S. Lewis, Screwtape Letters. Get way into your prayer life. Don't let the madness, don't focus on the madness. It will drive you mad. And many of good Christians, many a good spiritual warrior has fallen for that trick. Don't fall for it, right? You have to see it sort of like just from like a clinical thing. Like, oh, they're parading a retarded kid who's dressed in drag on, Good Morning America? And they're celebrating and telling me that I'm crazy if I don't endorse that lifestyle. You just have to see it from a clinical point. It's like, no, that's demonic. Those people are going to be responsible when that kid kills himself. That little innocent little boy who is autistic, he's not even, you know what I mean? Like, this is bananas. What's happening right now. But you can't stare at the vile nature of that because it'll drive you crazy. It'll make you feel confused. Do you understand that? Like, you're looking at that going, wait a minute. Where is CPS? Where are this boy's parents? Where is the community of people around these people that need to go over to their house and be like, hey, Mr. So-and-so, or Mrs. So-and-so, you can't do this to your kid. It's immoral, and I'm pretty certain it's against the law. You start getting confused, right? Like, you look at that, it's like, what's happening here? That's confusion, and that's falling for it. Don't do it, right? Take a step back, see it for what it is. That's demons, it's nonsense, and it's deadly. And it is specifically designed to break the heart of God. Use your weapons. Learn what your weapons are and use them. This I pray in Jesus' name. That's today's show. Owen Benjamin, Screwtape Letters. All the bears. Pick up the Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis and read it as if it is an operational manual. Right? And pick up any book. I think one of them is called The Power of Prayer. Like, pick up anything by E.M. Bounds. B-O-U-N-D-S. E.M. Bounds. And start practicing it. That's the show for today. Owen Benjamin, thank you for your work. You're doing great work. Don't stare long into the abyss. It will look back at you. And that's when the trouble bubbles up. Thanks for listening. Tune in tomorrow. I'll talk to you then. And if you want to support the show, I need money. Archadvocate.com. You can go, you do the paypal.me/archadvocate, I think it is, or you can become a monthly patron. Either way. And also, make sure to hit subscribe. Appreciate it, folks. We will talk to you. What is tomorrow anyways? Thursday? We'll talk to you then.